Hello, and now for the first time, biology. I've done videos on calculus, I've done videos on physics, I've done videos on chemistry, but I have never done videos on biology. For one reason, of all the sciences that I've mentioned at least, biology is probably my least favorite of the three. Probably goes in the order of physics and chemistry and biology. Of course, none of that's really important to you, is it? It's an old man talking about things of interest to him. But these are in honor of my daughter, Sophie, who is at Pepperdine taking biology right now. And so, being the nerd that I am, I thought I might uh, YouTube stalk her with biology videos. Not that she'll ever watch them. But here we go, biology. The first one, themes and concepts of biology. And the textbook, it's an e-textbook. I think it's free, actually, to the public, maybe, by Clark, Choi, and Douglas, Biology 2E. So, themes and concepts of biology. So, what is biology? Well, it's a study of life. Wow, isn't that obvious? Isn't that interesting? Actually, things get more interesting the more you know and understand about them, I find, but I'm a little weird. What's interesting about this is that some things technically, they're kind of biology related, but they don't technically belong in biology. So, for example, say take viruses. Viruses don't reproduce themselves. They have to kind of use somebody like me to reproduce themselves, which is kind of sick, but that's not important right now. And so, since viruses are not self producing, they don't have all the characteristics of life. Technically, viruses aren't considered living organisms by that definition. Similarly, people who study kind of pre uh, uh, the development of life before it took on kind of its full form in some of the um, uh, organisms, prokaryotes, we're going to talk about. That technically, that evolutionary development of things as they were coming toward life is not technically part of biology, biological mechanisms that are incorporated within living things. But okay, I'm talking too much. So, what is the study of life? Well, it's concerned with three basic things. Biology is concerned with what makes something alive, which is kind of what I've been talking about. What's the boundary line between something that's considered a living organism and, well, it's getting there. Um, what are the various ways that life is structured? So what are the levels of life? You know, as Ant-Man gets smaller and smaller, what does he pass along the way? And then how do we classify and organize living things? These are some of the main topics of biology. Okay, well, let's briefly then look at each one of them. Let me move my face to a different place, which rhymes with lace. No, oh, okay. So properties of life. What are some of the properties of life? Order, um, sensitivity, response to environment. You know, stimulus response. Stimulus response. That's a property of life. Reproduction is a property of life. Um, uh, Normally, well, yeah, living things reproduce when they're functioning in their normal fashion. Adaptation, the ability to change in a new environment. Growth, development, is a property of life. Regulation. So I can go from a very hot room outside into a snow place, but my body regulates my temperature. My temperature is going to stay, about 98.6, whether I'm inside or outside. Related is homeostasis. So whatever's going on outside a cell, say the inside of the cell tries to maintain a similar kind of equilibrium with the environment, a similar it's going to reach an agreement, a homeostasis with the environment. Energy processing. I just had a Cuban in Cuba. I'll let you try to figure out what that means. Um, but my body is processing that energy, and I've also had a little energy from this, which makes me talk faster. And then evolution. Now, some of you may not uh, be real excited about the idea of evolution. Of course, there are all kinds of levels of evolution, right? There's microevolution, which is why I have a chipu, or my wife does rather. A chipu is part Chihuahua, Chihuahua? Yeah, part Chihuahua and part poodle. A Chipu did not exist 20 years ago, I don't think. It has evolved by man-made manipulation, right? By human genetic engineering of the mating kind. We've created snickerdoodles, and things like that. That's a kind of evolution. Evolution is a process of change whereby organisms become different. Okay, so these are some of the basic properties of life. And of course, levels of organization. So let's go back to our Ant-Man or the wasp, if you prefer, kind of idea. So you have the building blocks of atoms and molecules. The atom is the smallest unit that is unique. So once you get beyond, the atom, you're into electrons and protons, which are all the same for everything. But atoms, like you have a hydrogen atom or a lithium atom or an oxygen atom, that's the smallest unique little building block of everything. Molecules are collections of atoms that bond or attract each other into other units like water, which is two hydrogens and an oxygen. So there you have Ant-Man about to, go crazy in the quantum world. But as he gets bigger, we find what are called macromolecules. These are not just molecules; these are megamolecules. These are not just small little molecules; these are big molecules, like deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. The long double helix, is a very, very big molecule. A polymer made out of monomers. So a monomer is like a little building block, and you click them all together, and the mono one mer becomes polymers, many mers. I don't know what mers are. We'll find out someday. Okay, so macromolecules, big molecules, proteins. Then you have organelles. As Ant-Man gets bigger, he gets beyond the DNA to the size of, say, mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. These are little mini organs. They're tiny organs. They're organelles that are inside the cell. We're not to the cell yet. The cell is, of course, the fundamental structure of life. So as the atom is to the element, all the inorganic stuff around us, the cell is the fundamental unit of living things. There are two basic kinds of cells. There are prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes don't have a nucleus, in the words of Nacho Libre, the nucleus. Prokaryotes don't have a nucleus. They don't have one. You don't have kind of membranes that bind stuff together. Eukaryotes do. And these are the two fundamental dividing things of living things. There are, I guess, way more prokaryotes than there are eukaryotes. It's just that we being big people, and no matter how small you are a big person compared to an amoeba, or something like that. So we tend to think that we're the most important thing, but we are in the minority as far as living creatures are concerned, as far as having nuclei, I think. Prokaryotes are a large group of things, including bacteria. Bacteria would be the most well-known prokaryote. Okay, and then of course, once we give about cells join together and form tissues, so I have skin tissue, I've got nervous tissue, I've got bone tissue. So we have these tissues that build up cells, and then tissues are in organs, not that, but like stomachs and lungs. And then you have organ systems like the respiratory system, or the nervous system, or the circulatory system, and so forth. And I don't know the motions to that song, but somebody should come up with a song on the organ systems. I'm sure it's been done. And then these organs come together into organisms, like I'm a person, I'm an organism. But of course, then we go outside the person. Ant-Man is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now we have populations. So the human population in the city of Houghton is, I don't know what it is, but that's a group of the same, species. In a community, well, there are other things. A deer met me in the parking lot. So the deer is part of the community here. There's a deer population, there's a human population, and together they make a community. And then there's the whole ecosystem, which would include not just the living things, but also the streams and the waterfalls and the trees and things like that. And then if you take all the ecosystems together, we have an Earth, a biosphere, levels of organization. This is also biology. So biology is one, what makes something living; two, these organizations and structures; and then lastly, the question of how to classify it all. You know, they used to say rock, paper, scissors. No, that's not it. It's animal, mineral, and vegetable. That's not even it either, really. So it used to be when I was a boy, they were talked about five kingdoms. It was up from three. You know, it used to be animal, plant, and microorganisms, or something like that, maybe. But then it was five kingdoms when I was born, and sometime in the mid 20th century. I won't mention when. So then there was the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the fungi, the protists, which are one-celled organisms, and then the bacteria, which don't have nuclei. And so those were the five kingdoms when I was born. This is a very human-centered thing, though, right? Because just because I'm important doesn't mean that in the sense of all living things that I am the majority. I'm not. Mammals are not the majority, for example. And so a guy named Carl Woos, I think that's his name, Carl Woos, redivided in the 1970s all living things into three categories. Eukarya, which is everything that has a nucleus. So that's humans to squirrels to fish to all kinds of things. And then these are the prokaryotes that don't have nuclei. Bacteria are the most common. Archaea, this is a kind of a difficult kingdom to talk about. These are like extreme organisms. These are the ones that, you know, can live in volcanoes and in strange places. But if you go with evolution, those that are in archaea are pre-bacteria. These aren't as developed or as evolved as bacteria. And basically, Woos used the genetic code, the genes. Woos used genes to identify what was what, rather than what's visible to us. Well, that plant doesn't look like me. It must be in a different kingdom. You know, Woos used actual genetic information to set up these three kingdoms. So a phylogenetic tree is a tree, and there's one in this book that shows how things branched out from earlier forms and how they're all related in a kind of branch. It's more like a bush, really, if you look at it, a branch kind of picture version of it. Well, I think I'm pretty well to the end there. Yeah, I am. So this has been our first video on biology, having to do with what is biology, what are the three basic concerns of biology, and just a little taste of what's in each of those branches. So on with biology.